Afternoon. So welcome to the start of a brand new series. I am terrified, mainly because most of the other forms of Warhammer lore content that I've seen online has been absolutely astronomically good. But actually the bits of lore that I really like the most are the lore videos where I don't have to watch them. I can just listen to them whilst I'm doing other things. Those are ones that I like the most. There are insanely good lore channels with animations and battle plans. That will not be the kind of thing that we're doing on this channel. And it never will be the kind of thing we're doing on this channel, quite frankly, unless I'm paid full time for it. And then, of course, I will. But at the moment, I'm quite happy sitting down with a cup of tea and going over the old world, where its origins, where it comes from, and we'll go through cultures bit by bit. But the first thing we actually have to do, as far as I'm concerned with the old world, is talk about how it was made. Right at the beginning. Also, I want to go into what kind of form these videos will take as we go through them. Essentially, they are going to be discussions about cultures, about how things link into the narrative back and forth, where inspiration has come from for certain cultures as we move through, okay? So this will be a fourth wall breaking kind of guide. We're going to go through the lore, we're going to examine the lore, we're going to talk about it and how things are cool, but I won't be representing this as a storybook type of lore video. There are tons of those videos out there, and right now I'd just be adding to the conversation without giving anything original in return. So this will be a lore run, quote unquote, as we normally do on the channel, but through a setting instead of through a video game or a TV show or anything. This is a lore run through the Warhammer setting. This is one of my favourite maps of the old world. It came out in a Warhammer magazine in White Dwarf a long time ago now, and I still have this. I still have this exact map folded up, and I'll always keep it, because it is one of my favourite things to look at. Because there's something inherently familiar about the Warhammer World map, and that is because it's based on Earth's tectonic movements, right? We have the very similar forms of continents and the way things are working as you look at the Warhammer World. It is quite frankly gorgeous to look at. There are a lot. As a storyteller, you can look at the Warhammer World and you can see stories everywhere. So if you look on the bottom right-hand corner of the map here, you can actually see the gates of Caliban there. I want to write a story about that. I didn't even know what that is. I know the Warhammer World lore quite well, but I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. How interesting would it be for us to find out together as we go through this series, to find out what that is and how it works and how you'd write a story about it. There are tons of factions and places in this world that are just begging to be used in stories, whether they be on the tabletop or whether they actually be in a story form, as in you're writing a book or writing a short story, or even artwork, right? We've all seen Warhammer artwork over the years. It is spectacular. But this is my favourite kind of Warhammer artwork, right? It's minimalist, it's quite dark, there are one or two colours, maybe three, right? This isn't Saturday morning cartoon, it's very dark and dingy, which is what I really like about it. So the first thing we need to do with the Warhammer World is talk about how the hell it was made. This is when we branch into a lot more sci-fi than I'd like to go into, okay? Because it terms a few things. One of them is the Great Plan, which is a plan made by some people called the Old Ones. Now, the Old Ones, we have no idea what their form was, right? We don't really know what their form was. A lot of people speculate that they looked very similar to the Slann, who we will also go over during this video. For me, I don't like to subscribe to that theory. I think the Old Ones were something else entirely. I think they were more like godlike beings. But it's said that they came to the Old World on ships of silver that sailed the stars. As you may know, that is writer speak for spaceships. So they arrived on the Old World in spaceships. And the Old World itself, I'm going to use the term Old World to describe the entire planet. But the Old World, actually, if we go back to the video, the picture that I was showing you before. The Old World actually is just up here, where the Empire, Bretonia, and Astalia, and Albion is, right top center of the map. That is what is termed as the Old World. Whereas for me, I use the term Old World to describe the entire setting simply because we now have Age of Sigmar. And I like to differentiate the two. So, for me, the Old World is the Warhammer world. And that started out far away from the star that actually bathes this entire solar system in starlight. It starts out quite far away. The Old Ones actually brought it closer to the star, so it would start melting the ice, because the Warhammer world used to be a ice-ridden planet. It used to be constant ice age all over the planet. That being pulled in, the ice starts to melt, and the Old Ones can begin forming the world to their own needs and their own wants. And they create quite a temperate world, with the slaves, not really, but servants in the Slan, which again we will go into in a minute. But in the star system of the Warhammer world, the star system comprises of 10 planets. Not all of these have been fleshed out by Games Workshop, okay? They orbit a single star, and only a handful of the names and their respective positions are actually known. We have Charib, we have Deamol, which is a burning world, which I can only assume is full of fire and things like that. We have Tigris, not the librarian from the Ultramarines. The Warhammer world, which is orbited by 2 moons. 2 moons orbit the Warhammer world, Morsleep and Mansleep. And these are the waxing and waning of magic, which I really love. I love the fact that Games Workshop have hammered in a sea-like mentality to magic in the Warhammer world. That the waxing and waning is actually, the moons too, are pulling and pushing the magical energies around the world. I love that. And Verdra, okay? Those are the only ones that are actually known. The other two, Locratia and Obscuria, are 2 other planets, but we don't know where they are. We don't know where they are, what they're doing, and whatever the hell is going on, okay? And the names of the 3 remaining planets and their positions are utterly unknown to us. We don't know anything about them, okay? So, as part of their plan, the Old Ones built 2 massive stellar gateways, one at the North Pole and one at the South Pole of this world, through which they could master the art of astral travel. That is, travelling from world to world and bringing wonders and technologies through and things like that as we go along through time. It also allowed magic to permeate the world, and that is the force through which the Old Ones melded and formed different races too. Like the Elder races, elves and dwarves. They came about through the machinations of the Old Ones. They were created by the Old Ones. So even though we call them the Elder races, they're not in fact the oldest race. No, no, no. That would be the Slan. And later on, the Lizardmen. Okay? We don't call them Seraphon. That's Age of Sigmar. These are Lizardmen. Alright. So, the Stellar Gateways, unfortunately, collapsed. Alright? So, around 15,000 years before Sigmar, who will come up in our own histories later on, 15,000 years before that, the Old Ones arrived. And around 5,000 years before Sigmar, the gates collapse on the North and South Poles. And they open permanent rents in reality through which chaos pours in. Chaos energies and demons start pouring into the world, and the Chaos Gods can start influencing the world at large. Now, unlike the Emperor in Warhammer 40,000, we don't actually know whether the Old Ones were opposed all the time to the Chaos Gods, or whether they became the Chaos Gods, or whether they were half Chaos Gods and half... We don't know. We simply know almost nothing about the Old Ones, unlike the Emperor and other things in Warhammer 40,000 that are really clearly explained. In Warhammer, as in the Old World, we don't know very much about what the hell was going on. We don't know why the Chaos Gods are invading, we don't know what their motivations really are, okay? And we don't even know what their feelings are towards the Old Ones. There are Old Ones in Warhammer 40,000 as well, but we don't know what their feelings are towards the Old Ones in Warhammer, the Old World. One would think it is antagonistic, considering the way that Chaos generally works, and considering the Old Ones disappeared shortly after this, one would think it was very antagonistic and that they drove the Old Ones to near extinction. One thing that is not really mentioned in the Warhammer lore is what happened to the Old Ones. They disappeared. They just fade from history after this point, after the destruction of their 2 gates. My theory is that their civilization was not just on the Warhammer world, it was on many different worlds, and the collapse of their gates had to do with the downfall of their entire civilization, not just the old world. With the collapse of these 2 gates at the North and South Poles, we have the emergence of chaotic energies entering into the magical forces of the old world. And from here, the chaos wastes start to spread across the world as it starts to corrupt and change magic. The Beastmen are formed, all the different types of unholy creatures that make the Warhammer world their home started to be born in this time period, the general corruption period of the setting. This is when it starts going less fantastical and space agey, and a lot more in-depth, grim, dark. You know, we're starting to see a lot of death happening right now. So, the Great Chaos Incursion has begun into the old world. And things start to unravel from there on in. Alright? The elves and dwarves fight back against the infinite hordes of chaos, and they try to save the world. They scoring their only successes that they would ever hope to hold out forever, right? The only success that they have is that they're holding out. Okay? This is the first war against chaos, and largely it's lost to history. But what is it? The only things that are known is that there's Inarian the Defender rose up to unite the elves, and Grungi, likewise the dwarves, who taught them craftsmanship and how to mine. So these are the origin stories of the 2 elder races, quote-unquote. But we will go into them at another time. We're going to leave those where they are for now, and we're going to just pull ourselves back to the Slann, who are the mortal, well, not mortal, but they are the servants of the Old Ones, right? So, Slann are large, toad-like beings. And these are the original servants of the Old Ones that came with them to the world, to the Warhammer world, and so they had a great hand in forming the Warhammer world to what we see today. They were created by great spawnings for the Old Ones, alright? And each had their own task in what is known as, quote-unquote, the Great Plan. And that is what the Old Ones term the actual motivations for the Old Ones. If you look at the Great Plan, okay, it's the original concept and groundwork for how the world should be, and how the universe should be, essentially. And that is the Great Plan. They're not it isn't a plan that is striving to achieve something as an end goal. It is a great plan designed to orchestrate life, which is all I can say on that one about the Old Ones. Their great plan is to orchestrate life and put it in its proper place. There have been 5 spawnings of Slann over the centuries, alright? Or over the millennia. The first spawning, okay, none of the first spawning have survived into the modern day Warhammer world, although many still remain as relic priests, the most famous being Lord Croak, alright? Relic priests being like, or undead priests, that these guys aren't really alive, alright? They're not really here to make sure that we can run things. The second spawning, only 5 of these remain, and their purpose was to alter the world's orbit. Alright, Mazdamundi is the most famous member of that spawning, and these Slann pulled the old world towards the star, so it could begin, its ice would begin to melt. The third spawning, younger than the forebears by almost 7,000 years, a score of the spawning still remain, ruling lesser cities or temples, so still incredibly powerful, but nowhere near as powerful as the first or second spawning. The fourth spawning, these Slann were spawned for a special purpose to maintain the warp gates and create the world pond that separates the continents, which is basically the oceans. They now act as generals, overseers, or subordinate rulers. Basically, the fourth spawning failed them, or they were supposed to do, and that's protecting the gates that are at the top and bottom of the Warhammer world. The fifth spawning, these are the youngest of the Slann, created only centuries before the Great Catastrophe, which is, you know, the coming of chaos, which is a rather horrible thing that happened. Even so, they remember the time before the race of men and dwarves. They're the most active of the Slann and commonly lead armies of lizardmen. So, a lot of the Slann that we know today, none of them had contact with the Old Ones. None of them can remember the Old Ones as they were. Which, again, is a very convenient way for us to sidestep what the Old Ones were and what they look like. Okay? The fifth spawning are the ones that we see the most common in the Warhammer world, and they remember what time was like before the coming of Chaos. That's before the Empire, before elves, before men. These are the oldest beings in the Warhammer world. These are things that are completely alien and beyond most of the people who are living in the Warhammer world today. They are in the far west, so in Lustria. That is where they make their home, and they are completely opposed to chaotic forces and energies. Of course they are, because the chaotic forces and energies stand against the great plan of the Old Ones, their gods. Okay? So let's move on a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the Lizardmen. Inspiration behind the Slann. So obviously, their architecture and their cities are very Aztec and very Mayan in construction. The Games Workshop have leaned a lot into the Mayan and Aztec mythology of being there at the very start of time, being there at the very end of time. 2012 being on the Mayan calendar, for instance, being the end, the date the world's supposed to end. That is, for me, a very clever way of linking the creation myth of the Warhammer world into something really tangible in our own world. And that's something that you will see in the Warhammer world going forwards, and that it keeps doing that. It keeps reaching back to the real world, taking it and twisting it a little bit, and then throwing a load of fantasy on it and putting it in its own world. As we can see from the very Warhammer world itself, as we look at the map, it is essentially what Earth looks like, but changed and warped by magic and all types of different beings and gods. One theory that I really like about the Old Ones is that they are actually ancient humans, or some of the shamans that created the Emperor, and that the Emperor is in fact an Old One, which I thought was really, really cool. And that's that they came to this world to create a new Earth, and that new Earth was corrupted by chaos, and so this Warhammer world is aeons away from the Milky Way galaxy. It's nowhere near even our galaxy. Which is why we don't see things like the Imperium and Space Marines turning up. But some of the shamans actually came to this world as Old Ones and tried to recreate Earth, and Chaos found them and corrupted it and changed it and fought against them, essentially. Which I really like as a theory. But the Slann, as you can tell, are very Aztecian in their culture, and they have one thing that I really like about the Slann is their use of dinosaurs, because you can never have too many dinosaurs in a setting. And of course, America is where we find, in the real world, a lot of dinosaur fossils. In fact, most of the fossils found in the world are in the Americas. The actual meteorite that ended the age of the dinosaurs landed in South America. Okay, so we have, in our own world, America, as the Americas, not the country, the Americas is incredibly linked to the dawning myths, legends, and weirdness of our own planet. And in the Warhammer world, that is exactly the same. That is exactly what the Slann represent. They are fighting a war unknown to everybody else against the forces of chaos. That is why they seem so alien. They're not born of this world. They are born from gods directly, rather than anybody else. So everything that we're going to see in the Warhammer world, essentially, comes from these characters. It comes from the Slann, and it comes from the Old Ones. That is the epicenter of the foundation myth of the Warhammer world. From here, the lizard men are born from the Slann, creating their own servants. The Slann edge away into obscurity as they fight a losing battle, a constant losing battle against the forces of chaos that are always coming in from the North and South Poles. So next time, we'll be starting to go over the Elder races, okay? We will be mentioning the Great War, the first Great War against Chaos, and other bits and bobs like that. But I really want to move away from periods where we don't have much historical background. I want to move into periods where we do have historical background, when we do see cultures and things like that. But this was the foundational part of the Warhammer world. Next time we're going to talk about magic, first and foremost, how it works, what happens in the Warhammer world when magic is used, how it can be corrupted, and we'll also talk about the Chaos Wastes too, and the things that are pouring out of those things later on. So, I hope you enjoyed this one. This is the first in a very long series, hopefully. Hope you enjoyed the Slann and the Old Ones, and next time we'll be talking about a little bit of magic. See you then.